Good evening and welcome to the April 20th voting meeting of the Exeter Township Board of School Directors. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge. Mr. Fike, if you could please start us off with the roll call, please.
Allison Wilson.
Here.
Hunter Ahrens.
Here.
John Fiddler.
Here.
Dr. Ann Herring.
Here.
Dr. David Hemberger.
Here.
Michael Chapina.
Here.
Dr. Sharon McClendon.
Here.
Puri Miller.
Here.
Michelle Stratton.
Here.
All present.
Wonderful, thank you. Before we get started this evening, I would like to share that the board met in executive session on March 30th and April 13th to discuss legal and personnel issues. Okay, moving through our agenda, Dr. Minor, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. This week, our students began taking the PSSA test. As you may or may not be aware, the state was unable to secure a waiver that was discussed at length regarding not having to take the PSSAs this year. That would have been a waiver from the federal government regarding the necessity of standardized testing. So we did begin that this week, and all reports from the buildings are that students are doing their best, and we're really pleased and we appreciate that. And we know it's an extra effort. PSSAs are always a challenge for our students and their families, but particularly in this year. So we do thank everyone for that. In other news around the central office, we're pleased this week to welcome Jen Breton to our central office staff as our new communications specialist. We're very excited about her addition to our team, and we are looking forward to our families getting to see more and more of the wonderful things that happen here each and every day with our students and our staff, from athletics to the arts to special events in the classroom to everyday academic activities. And so we welcome her, and hopefully as community members and as board members, you'll be really pleased with the opportunities that will present. We're also looking to make our website even more user-friendly and have the ability at this point to welcome comments from the community in terms of reaching out to Jen directly on things that they would like to see us improve on or ways that they would like to be communicated with. We really do want to have that position be something that the community feels is of tremendous value. So we thank the board for their support in that position, and we welcome Jen. That's all, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here this evening that would be interested in making public comment? Okay, Mr. Morgan.
Good evening. Timothy Morgan, 4780 Farmington Boulevard. Just in regards to the budget presentation, first of all, I want to say that Mr. Pike and Dr. Meyer, I thought that it was a very good presentation. I liked the format a lot better than last year. It was definitely clearer for me to understand, and you touched on a lot of points that I think makes us understand how you get the numbers, so thank you. And it's also great to see that you guys have worked hard to see almost $500,000 in reduction. I'm here today to talk about the 1.9% tax increase. I do think that as a taxpayer in Exeter and many people that I've talked to, that we've had a rough 14 months. I think it's safe to say that we all would like a break from the tax increases. And I just have a couple questions for the administration, specifically in regards to the charter schools. I never like to ask for something without asking for something with a solution, if you will. In your presentation, you said that right now we have a $1.9 million budget for charter schools. 500,000 of that is charter schools that have decreased since the pandemic. That represents 57% of what you're asking for taxpayers. So really what I'm asking for is some more details on the charter schools that decreases. You touched on Exeter's going to have virtual schooling next year. Interested to know what that's going to look like in 2022. What the results of your discussions have been with those families, and what are we doing to get people back? I did some research on ETSD 2 and 3. You are right. It's you don't want to use that to balance the budget. However, my understanding is that Exeter could be looking at as much as I think it's $4.7 million to the township, to the district. And really just interested to know what our plans are with that money. If we can use a large chunk of that money to really make a virtual program that's going to be inviting for our charter school kids, to try to invite them back into the district. I think that, when you look at $1.9 million, it seems to be the biggest way that if we reduce some of these students going to charter, it saves the taxpayers dollars. And, we're asking for $876,000 from taxpayers on a 1.9 charter school budget. So just interested to get your feedback, and once again, just express that, my personal belief would be the taxpayers at this time. I do thank you for everything you guys are doing, and keep up good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson, said that she would be fine with me addressing Mr. Morgan's questions. In terms of the increased expenditures around charter schools, that is something that has been seen universally across the state of Pennsylvania. In fact, Exeter School District falls in the middle range. Certainly some school districts have seen a far greater impact. Ultimately, I think the charter school question, particularly the question of cyber charter schools, is one that needs to be solved legislatively. We have a committee on legislative action through the Berks County Intermediate Unit, and working on getting after charter school financing is one of their core goals for this year. Dr. Hemberger serves on that committee as a representative of the district, as does Mr. Fike along with me. The cyber charter school funding issue is one I think is imperative for all community members to talk to their representatives in the legislature about. Particularly, cyber charter schools are funded at the level of the district expense for students in regular or special education, and not at an actual cost for the price to educate that student. And so there have been many proposals around reforming the way that charter schools receive money from districts. And I do think that that's a critically important thing for people in the community to recognize, is there is a need for our legislature to take action on the topic of cyber charter school funding and the burden that that does put on taxpayers. In terms of what we're doing here in Exeter and our specific increase to charter school costs this year, many families at the point of the pandemic, either last spring, throughout the summer, or throughout the course of the school year, did choose other options. Some chose parochial schools, some chose homeschooling, and some flocked to cyber charter schools. And of course, cyber charter schools had the opportunity to advertise heavily, and they took full advantage of that opportunity to say to families, public schools are doing this virtual thing. They've never done it before. We've been doing it for years. We do it better. And really were able to draw a lot of students out of public schools, and those dollars do follow those students, directly. And it's a direct withdrawal, really, from a school district budget when a student goes to a cyber charter school. So it was extremely concerning to all of us as educators that was happening. And at the same time, those cyber charter schools were receiving funds from the federal government that we were receiving as public schools to do two things: mitigate the effects of COVID so that we could open our buildings when they don't have buildings to open, or to purchase technology so that kids could learn virtually, which they already had because they're cyber schools. So there's, a lot of issues that I think continue to be needed to be sorted out. In terms of what we're doing here to bring students back, we certainly welcome all of the students who have left Exeter in the course of the pandemic, whether it's been to parochial, homeschool, or charter schools. We would like to see all of our students return to us. In terms of the cyber charter in particular, we have always offered a virtual academy here, and we've had several different versions of virtual learning. We've had the Exeter Virtual Academy. We've had supported cyber school for students who have special needs, who needed a cyber option. And this year we made a conscious decision to consolidate our virtual programming with Dan Wilczek, who is one of our instructional coaches for technology, who has significant career experience in working with virtual learning. And he is a wonderful member of our team and has been really working hard on this issue. So we're going to consolidate all of that under Dan so that we have a consistent model delivery. We're also going to be working with our teaching staff to take what they have learned this year from providing virtual education and really make that into an outstanding Exeter program using tools like School to do that, as well as partnering with third-party providers for things that we're unable to directly have our teachers offer. So in terms of how we're dedicating ESSER 2 and 3 funds to that, we have allocated at this point $300,000 for the initial startup with Dan to work with our teachers in development of courses. He will be reaching out shortly to our students who are currently virtual, even if they're in Exeter virtual programs, to find out if those families want to pursue virtual education in the event that COVID is hopefully in a much better spot and we open schools in the fall here through Exeter. Because one of our concerns is we don't want further students to go off to cyber charters next fall, right? So we want to make sure that before families even consider that they know that what we're offering here. And then once he gets those survey results back, parents who indicate that they do want a virtual option in the fall, he'll reach out to them directly about their specific needs, the grade level of their child, etc. Students who are currently in cyber charter, I have been reaching out to them with personal letters from the superintendent's desk, inviting them to consider coming back to Exeter. And then Dan's following up with phone calls to those families again to try to discern what specific things they're getting from cyber charters that they wouldn't be getting from Exeter. And we try to remind families that by participating in Exeter virtual programs, not only do we think that they'll get a higher quality education that's aligned with our curriculum, so that if some point their children want to come back into our curriculum at a later grade, they're really prepared to do that. They have the opportunity to get an Exeter diploma, to participate in Exeter curricular activities. So although they often can participate in co-curricular activities, for instance, orchestra lessons, something that happens during the school day, they can't participate in. But if they go to Exeter virtual school, they have the opportunity to participate in those. So really trying to differentiate what sets Exeter apart from those cyber schools. So right now, just to kind of summarize that, I know that was a lot. Dan has been tasked with this job. We're reaching out to those families who are currently at cyber charters directly and charters, as well as families who we think may be considering it, to really gather information about their specific needs. We've allocated $300,000 in startup funds towards the project of building our program, and then we'll continue to allocate funds as needed to fully flesh out and develop those programs. Because I agree with you 100%, Mr. Morgan, that to send our dollars out the door to cyber charter when we could potentially be offering those programs in-house at a far reduced rate and for a much higher quality program only makes sense, and ultimately not only benefits those children and their families, but certainly our taxpayers. So that is absolutely in our planning, but I do think that Mr. Fike and I, with presenting a budget with a 1.9 tax increase, the purpose of that is to cut our structural deficit in half. And certainly if we see great returns and we see families come back and we see a savings there, that will be reflected in the budget. But at this point, Mr. Fike is doing what all good business managers do, which is not predicting a savings that there's no guarantee that there will be, and looking at the reality of the current situation, which is those students have not committed to come back to Exeter at this time. And there's nothing that we can do to get parents to commit by the deadline, at which time the budget is due. So if we would see a mass group of parents return, perhaps we could adjust the budget figures. But without that happening, I think we're better to err on the side of assuming that they won't return. I think that's just the financially responsible prediction to make at this point. You're welcome.
Did you want to add the other ESSER? The use of the other ESSER funds? Summer school.
Yeah, so Mr. Fike was asking me if I wanted to talk about other ESSER expenditures. So there have been several ESSER grants. You mentioned that Exeter's due to receive several $1 million, and there has been questions in certain forums about whether or not Exeter should use that money or could use that money to offset their budget. As you mentioned, we can't. It's really one-time money that will not be provided to us through any source in the federal government in the future. And the state government has been very clear that we should not build our budgets with that money because we will fall off a fiscal cliff, as happened many, many years ago, and school districts are still kind of recovering from that. So a good portion of the funds, in fact, 20% of the funds must be used for academic recovery for learning loss. we're spending a much larger portion of that on learning loss and on one-time expenditures to help our students advance, like our summer program that's being offered to students who have an academic or financial need this year. We've also made investments in literacy materials, technology materials, those sorts of things that we hope will really help our students to recover from any learning loss that they experienced during the pandemic. So at this point, all of the money that we've actually received in grants has been allocated to one of those purposes, either COVID mitigation, sanitizers, that sort of thing, plexiglass, etc., preparing for virtual learning or for technology to support existing virtual learning, and then to recover from learning loss for our students. So those have been the uses in terms of broad buckets that we've been putting our ESSER funds into.
Do we have anybody online? Okay. All right, then we're going to move forward with our agenda. The board meeting minutes. If there is no objection, we will adopt a motion to approve meeting minutes from last month's school board meetings, the special board voting meeting March 2nd, committee of the whole meeting March 2nd, and board voting meeting March 16th. Hearing no objection, we will approve these minutes. The treasurer's report and payment requests. If there is no objection, we will adopt a motion to approve the March 2021 treasurer's report and payment requests dated March 17th, 2021 through April 20th, 2021. Hearing no objection, we will approve those treasurer's report and the payment requests. Okay, moving on our agenda to the Education Committee, Dr. McClendon.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. So under item A, we have an attachment, the enrollment report for enrollment for March 2021. Under item B, it's field trips within the 60-mile radius. It is reported that the field trip below within the 60-mile radius has been approved. And that's the junior high chorus members will perform the national anthem at the Reading Phillies game on May 26, 2021. All Exeter and Phillies COVID guidelines will be followed for performing and attending the game. So congratulations to the chorus for that honor. And under item C, that will be a consent agenda. So we have items 1 through 6. It was there was a 2 number 3s, and that has been corrected on the online agenda. But if you have a hard copy, you may see 2 number 3s, but it's items 1 through 6. So it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the following Education Committee items 1 through 6.
Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a question on the RAC agreement. Is that available for other than seniors, or is it just seniors?
Now I can turn on. Sorry, I couldn't get my mic to turn on. I believe that it is open to any students who wish to take those dual enrollment classes for that credit, but I don't know if Mr. Campbell is listening. I don't think so. Dr. Flam, do you know for sure? So we could double check on that, Mr. Fiedler. I do believe it is open to other students, but I would have to get back to you.
It is open at other
Thank you,
students.
Mrs. Wilson. There
Okay.
you go. A parent
Thanks.
knows the answer.
Just a quick story. One of my favorite students when I taught at RAC, also my best student, was a junior at Conrad Weiser. So I just want to be sure that our juniors are also eligible.
Well, apparently they are. Thank
Great.
you to Mrs.
Okay,
Wilson for
thanks.
letting us know.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to, thank you, Dr. McClendon. And moving on to the Personnel Committee, Mr. Japina.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. We too will be using a consent agenda, though I would like to pull number 6 off and vote separately on that one. So it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the following personnel committee items. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the following personnel committee item. Item number 6, the creation of a new special education supervisor position in accordance with the Act 93 compensation plan for the 2021-2022 school year.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to say I've spent some time looking into this. I am fully supportive of this action and completely understand what we're trying to accomplish. As we know, no success is guaranteed, but I believe that this is a very solid plan. It's very comprehensive, and it's very well thought out, and I appreciate the effort that was put into this to helping me to understand it.
Thank you, Mr. Chapina. We certainly appreciate your support, and we are very committed as a team to making sure that this position, along with the other changes that are recommended, really support the success of our students. And we, again, appreciate all of the support of the board in these actions.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Mr. Japina. And now we're moving on to the Finance, Facilities, and Audit Committee. Mr. Ahrens.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the following finance, facilities, and audit items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 I had a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
On the Psba policy maintenance participation agreement, I didn't see a price tag on that. Okay, well, what's the annual bill? A few thousand. Okay, that's all. I was just curious. Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry I didn't have my mic on.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Moving on to the Policy Committee, Dr. Hamburger.
I wanted to do a committee report, unless I should do it at the end. I don't see a spot for it at the end though. I just wanted to share with the board, and I shared this via email as well, that we'll be having a committee meeting next Tuesday night virtually starting at 6 o'clock, I believe. Is that what time it was advertised for? 6 to 8 o'clock, I think, right? Yep. All right. That's my recollection as well. So it'll start at 6 to 8 o'clock. We'll send out Zoom credentials for that as well. We'll be discussing several items. One of them will be the LERTA program that we talked about 2 weeks ago, as well as the firefighter tax credit, the capital budget presentation, or overview, I should say, from the administration, and then other topics that are going to come up between then and now. The purpose of that is really to have a discussion and try and make some decisions around what we would present to the board, if anything, in May, so that we're not trying to figure that out at a board meeting where we have other things that are pressing as well. So that's the purpose of that meeting, and I just encourage everybody to attend.
Okay, Dr. Hamburger.
Thanks, Mrs. Wilson. It's recommended the Board of School Directors approve the policies as listed in the agenda. 5 of them, the first 5 are for first reading, and the second 5 listed in the policy or in the agenda are for second reading.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Can I say something quick about that?
Sure.
I just want to say that I appreciate that we added veterans from our community to go to our games and our performances for free. And I hope that they take advantage of it as soon as we are allowed to have more spectators. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Herring, it's your turn anyway with the Athletics and Extracurricular Activities Committee.
All right. A few things I have. Tickets for Seed Folk, the senior high school fall play, are currently available and will be streamed this coming weekend. The senior high school musical, The Wizard of Oz, is going very well, and tickets will be available for purchase through the district around May 1st. They're working on the in-person logistics capacity with Mr. Campbell. The date of the mini-thon has been moved. It's now Friday, May 14th from 4 to 10. Event registration is due Friday, April 23rd with the $20 registration fee. The Technology Student Association State Conference was held virtually this past week, Wednesday to Saturday. Over those 4 days, 20 students from Exeter High School competed as both individuals and teams in STEM-based events. Exeter had over 10 teams and individuals qualify for semifinal interviews at the state conference and finished the weekend with 7 top 10 place winners. These students have been working diligently since October to compete in the regional conference and qualify for states. And lastly, I like to highlight things that happen at the schools. And this time I'd like to highlight something called The Leak, which is a newspaper that the school has been doing at the high school, and it's up there now, and I also emailed a copy to all the board members. I asked Ann Thomas, who is the advisor for that, if she can give me some information, and she said, I had gone to visit my son at college and noticed the bathroom newsletters in the bathroom stall. I thought it was something that we could do here because the BCTC kids are not in the building to see the announcements on E4. Through the years, they have always complained that they aren't aware of what is happening around the school, plus not every teacher shows E4, so lots of other kids were missing out. I thought it would be a great project for the Y Teens Club to take on, and I also mentioned it in my classes in case anyone was interested in helping it. I had one student who said that she brought up the idea at school forum every single year. Everyone always agreed it was a good idea, and then it never went any further. She and I mainly worked on it in the beginning until other students were interested. We kept up with it until the end of last year and then started again this year when we had more kids in the building and more things to add. Last year, we had them in every stall in every bathroom. This year, we're just placing one on the mirror over the sink in each bathroom. Hopefully next year, we'll be back to normal. And that's it. And I want to thank Ann Thomas for being the advisor for that because it's a fabulous idea. And that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, I can just say, again, I know we talked about mini-thon, and I just sort of want to remind people, sort of have a bit of a vested interest in this because I do work at Penn State Health, but the Four Diamonds Fund covers 100% of all medical expenses related to cancer care not covered by insurance. So what our students are doing in terms of raising funds truly goes to support those families who have children with cancer who have an inability to, actually not an inability, whose expenses are paid through the efforts of our mini-thon activity. So I really want to thank those students and their supporters in the community for supporting mini-thon. Thank you.
I've got a question for Dr. Herring. Any reason why it never went anywhere? No. Yeah, you said year after year, someone brought it up and it just, no. Okay.
By the way, I like the name, so that's pretty.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Herring. Moving on to Equity and Excellence at Exeter Committee, Dr. McClendon.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Wilson. The Equity Committee met on April 12th. We had Carly Patton. She gave an update on her community organization, Voice Up Berks, and the STAR program that's standing up against racism. And also she gave us an update on the student group that meets at the high school. You may recall Miss Jordan Sparks and Miss Jessica Sutherland presented a couple of meetings ago the newsletter that they created. So they, Joe Calmeda recognized that the newsletter was not ADA compliant. So those two teachers worked to revise the newsletter and to make it ADA compliant, and then they presented that in the group. Miss Virginia Gonzalez and Mr. White worked to design a logo, and they presented that to the group. Let's see. Oh, and I wanted to mention that Carly Patton will be speaking at the Committee of the Whole meeting in May. And let's see. And then we have these goals that we presented to the board a while back, and so we got into small groups and worked on developing an action plan for our goals. So in our next equity meeting will be Monday, May 3rd. So that concludes my report on the equity committee meeting. But I have one question about, we had talked about this board getting Psba training, and equity training. Do we have any information on that, Mrs. Wilson?
Yes, I reached out to the contact that you had sent me, and she did share with me all of the options for training and the costs associated with that. So I do need to work with Dr. Miner so that we can decide which one would be in the best interest of the whole board. So we will work on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That concluded my report.
Thank you. Moving on to the Exeter Community Education Foundation, Mr. Miller.
Oh, and thanks for remembering me this time.
I know.
We got it.
Circled it.
Information was shared last week with teachers and staff regarding ECEF's yearly teacher mini grant application process. Mini grants of $500 and below will be awarded to staff that have innovative projects and demonstrate the best outcomes. Last year, 9 mini grants of $4,500 in total were awarded. Staff will be notified June 1st of their mini grant outcomes. So good luck, teachers. Hopefully you guys do that. That'd be great. That's it.
Okay, thank you. All right, BCTC, Mr. Fiddler.
Thank you. As of last Friday, the East Campus at BCTC has gone full virtual. They reached their threshold of 8 students, and they will remain virtual until next Monday.
And then BCIU, Board of Directors, Dr. Hamburger.
Thanks, Mrs. Wilson. I think the board members did receive a copy of what's happening or what happened at BCIU, so I won't go into too much detail. Just a few things, though, from the meeting that we had last Thursday with the IU board. We did get a new board member from the Muhlenberg School District, and they recognized the passing of Mr. Randy Madeira, who was a long-term board member at Muhlenberg, who passed away. And during the meeting and before we got into the business part of it, they highlighted 4 employees who were instrumental in performing what they deemed exemplary service in the implementation of the COVID vaccination program. And the IU provided over 5,200 vaccines at their facility. So these folks were considered BCIU champions, and it was good to hear their stories. There was also a video presentation of the Pennsylvania Key Equity Awareness Project. And finally, they did approve some legal services for the IU, services provided by John Stott and Jim Mancuso, who have been their attorneys for the BCIU for many years. And that's all for my report.
Okay, and you can keep going then to legislative liaison.
Okay. As Dr. Miner pointed out, we did have a COLA meeting, Council on Legislative Action. This is a committee that meets 4 times a year, usually bringing in some guest speakers and dealing with legislative issues or other issues that are relevant from a legal perspective. This particular meeting, we had the opportunity to hear from Nathan Maines, who's the CEO of Psba, also Chief Advocacy Officer John Callahan, and they introduced also Larry Feinberg. Maybe some of you get Larry's email messages. He's very, very active in cyber charter change, and as a matter of fact now has been given a new role with the Keystone Center for Charter Change. So he had quite a bit to say in regard to that. Larry's also the board president of the Haverford School District in Delaware County. During the meeting, the IU kind of went through again. You've heard it from me before. Their targeted advocacy campaign, where the emphasis, as Dr. Miner pointed out, is on cyber charter funding reform and also special education funding here in Pennsylvania. And they're sort of moving into the second part of their advocacy campaign, where they're going to be making more direct appeals to legislators, probably doing more targeted work with specific legislators and other types of communications to try to really press the issue on the need for change. I mean, it was pretty clear, not only during that presentation, but also in the follow-up from Nathan Maines and from John Callahan, that we do have, I think, a pretty good shot. We're closer than ever to get some meaningful cyber charter school reform in the way it's funded. And it's not that, I think COLA was saying, and the new representatives in COLA were basically saying, we're not here to attack cyber charter schools. There's probably a place for cyber charter schools. But what we're really going after, I think, is the fact that it's inequitably funded, inappropriately funded. And there's the costs associated with it have no logical connection to the actual expenses. So, Larry Feinberg followed up with that, and he talked a little bit about his a website that he manages. It's called pacharterchange.org, and I would suggest people take a look at that, pacharterchange.org. It's a collection of updated news articles on a real regular basis, research articles, and other things associated with the whole concept of charter schools, or cyber charter schools, and with particular emphasis on the funding. Larry also mentioned that statewide, very similar to Exeter here, there's been a 46% increase in cyber school attendance due to COVID. So that's pretty much exactly where we are as a district. And then finally, I think at the end of the meeting, John Callahan reviewed the Psba Virtual Advocacy Day. We had 220 members participate, and I think I covered that in one of our previous meetings. John also talked a little bit about what's new in Harrisburg, and I did send around just maybe today or yesterday the IU's legislative report that contains a lot of the information in regard to what some of the more important topics are for the legislature to consider, and some of the bills in both the House and the Senate that are being considered that are relevant to public education. One thing that John did say was, in his parting, John, again, being the primary lobbyist for Psba, he said one of the most effective things we could do in advocacy is to bring legislators into our school buildings. And I think that was probably pretty good advice. I don't know how often we do that, but I think these are folks who, in many respects, don't have the complete picture, and getting a chance to actually interact with educators, with our administrative team, and being able to walk through a school and see kids actually learning is real powerful for these folks. So I would encourage that whenever we can do that, we should take advantage of that. because it is effective. Mrs. Wilson, that's all for my report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hamburger. Okay, moving on, Mr. Aaron's Township Borough Liaison.
I just want to try and share a quick update with the board, and I'm probably going to lean on Brian a little bit for this, just to talk about where we are with the bus garage. It's my understanding that a little bit over 4 weeks ago now, we gave the application to the township for them to review the zoning regulations related to the bus facility where it currently exists, and we're still awaiting to hear back from that. Is that correct?
We actually met with them and gave them a preliminary application, basically our design. They came back and they asked for a site survey, which we couldn't find, which I did have a survey done of the property. We're also giving them, we gave them the sketch plan of the property. They really liked it. They actually liked the decrease in building size by 500 square feet, and I was also adding some green space. But they asked for a sketch of what the building would look like. It's not what's going to be final, but that should be over to them probably by the end of this week, and then they're going to present it to their supervisors, and hopefully it will not have to go through land development.
Okay, so they
felt with everything we had, it probably does not need land development, but the supervisors have to make that decision.
Okay. All right. I guess I was just surprised by that information, but I'll make it a priority that I'll be at that meeting when that happens. It'll probably be virtually, so I'll probably just be attending. But I think it's important for us to advocate, especially locally, and I know that we have a good working relationship right now with the Board of Supervisors, so that'll be critical. Yeah. Whenever that date would come up, could you please share that with the entire board? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, are there any board members who would like to be heard at this time?
Mrs. Wilson, may I be heard for one moment, please? I neglected to mention in my superintendent's report, as you may know, we have been partnering with Walmart to deliver COVID-19 vaccinations here on site at Lausch. They are in round 2 of shots, and by the end, they will have vaccinated over 3,000 people in our surrounding community here. And they have been wonderful partners, and they have done a really outstanding job. They offered, as a thanks to the Exeter School District, to have one additional week of vaccinations specifically targeted at our students age 16, 17, 18, 19, because they do have the Pfizer vaccination. Students as young as 16 are eligible. They would need to be accompanied by a parent. And that would be extended to all family members, as now the state has opened up vaccination to anyone over 16, recent graduates, really anybody who has an affiliation with Exeter would be welcome to attend. The dates of those 3 clinics will be May 4th, 5th, and 6th, and the shots will be from 12 to 8 to facilitate families bringing students after school. We're hopeful that we can help families get, particularly students who may be headed to college in the fall, students who want to work summer jobs, etc., and be vaccinated prior to the end of the school year. Students, and again, all related Exeter people, anybody with any tie to Exeter is welcome to join. That anybody who signs up for the shots on the 4th, 5th, and 6th for the first dose, the Pfizer vaccine is a 2-dose, and they will have the second doses 3 weeks later, also here at Lausch. That will be a sign up via a 1-800 number, and Jen, our new communications director, will be sending out a save the date to Exeter families to make them aware of when that 1-800 number will be released, as well as just holding that opportunity so that they don't have to drive a long distance or go through any complicated process. And we're grateful to Walmart for extending that opportunity. So I just wanted to share. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just wanted to announce there is a food drive this weekend, so please don't forget you can drop off food at Dunn Center on April the 24th from 9 to 12. You also have some locations that you can drop off right now at Reading Country Club and also the Spine and Wellness Center, and also Exeter Township Library and the Exeter Administration Building. So those 4 locations you can drop off food right now. If you are in the following neighborhoods, you could just put it at the mailbox. Farming Ridge, Country Club Run, Golf Club Estates 1, Golf Club Estates 2, Lorraine Orchard, Sunrise, Fairway Estates, Devon Green, Linstead, Five Points area, Hunter's Run, Glenoley Farms, Grist Mill Farm, Valley Ridge Farm, and Pathfinder Meadows. So those locations, just put it at your mailbox, we'll pick it up. So definitely, there's still some people who's really struggling, so it's good to help.
Anyone else? Okay. If there is no objection at this time, I will adjourn this meeting. Hearing no objections, this meeting is adjourned.